Find a comfortable position. Let your body settle without hurry. There is nothing you need to hold upright now. Nothing you need to keep carrying from one part of the afternoon into the next. Today's story is called A Quiet Afternoon Nap in a Treehouse. The treehouse is already holding the day in a different way from the woods below. Outside, the afternoon still lies broad across leaves and trunks and the slope of the ground beyond the clearing. But here, within this small timber room lifted among branches, the light has already changed its nature. It arrives through the window or the open shutter in softened pieces. One pale band along the boards, a warmer patch across the built-in bench, a leaf shadow moving once over the wall and then resting there only as a faint darkening in the grain. Nothing in the treehouse feels exposed. The day remains bright beyond it, but inside the timber room the brightness has been broken into gentler parts and made easier for the body to remain within. The doorway is only a threshold for a moment. The last of the afternoon outside lingers there, a wide summer brightness through leaves, the smell of warmed bark, and dry grass somewhere below, the suggestion of open air moving between branches. Then the treehouse gathers around you. The walls are close enough that they matter at once. The boards hold the warmth of the day where the sun has touched them, and deeper shade where the corner has stayed cooler. The bench bed runs along one side beneath the window, long enough for the body to settle without effort, built right into the room as though the treehouse shaped itself around the need for rest before anything else was added. The bench bed is the clearest truth in the room. It does not feel placed there. It feels made with the walls. The timber edge beneath it, the window above it, the small shelf opposite or near the corner, the way the cushion lies along its length, all of it belongs to one simple logic. A body can sit here. A body can lean here. A body can lie down and let the whole afternoon shrink to this one narrow, sheltered place. The cushion itself has softened through use. It is smoother at the center than at the edges. One seam lies flatter than the rest. A folded blanket or thin quilt may be spread across it, not perfectly, but with the kind of easy care that belongs to a place used often enough not to need tidying into display. You lower yourself onto it, and the bench bed receives you at once. The cushion gives beneath the backs of the legs first, then under the hips. One hand may come to rest beside you on the blanket or cover. The other may steady briefly against the wall-side cushion or the timber frame below the window. The room is too small to require much orientation. The body understands it immediately. The wall is near. The window is near. The bench bed is beneath you. There is no broad room to measure, no empty space to account for, no need to decide what in the room matters most. The bench bed has already made that decision. The fabric beneath your hand tells the truth about itself. It is not new. It has been washed, folded, spread, leaned against, and pressed into quiet use many times. If it is cotton, it has that dry softness that belongs to repeated afternoons and clean air and old timber rooms. If it is a worn blanket over firmer upholstery, then the layers together say the same thing. This is a place that expects stillness and knows how to hold it without needing to appear precious. One part of the fabric is warmer where the filtered light has reached it. Another part keeps more of the room's deeper shade. A seam under the fingers feels flatter in one place than another. None of this asks to be admired. It only reassures. The timber wall behind the bench bed is close enough to matter. One board is darker than the next where its grain runs more thickly through it. Another has a knot at shoulder height, polished slightly by years of passing hands or by the simple wear of air and time. The boards are not polished into perfection. They are smoothed by use where use has touched them and left more textured where nothing has needed to. One edge, close to where your shoulder may lean later, is worn a little softer. Even that small wornness helps the body understand something important. This room has held stillness before. The window above or beside the bench bed keeps the outside present, but only just. Beyond it, there are leaves, branches, brightness. Perhaps one thicker limb crosses near enough to be seen clearly. Perhaps a little further beyond there is only a pale layering of green and gold where light passes through leaves and turns them thinner. You do not need to know the shape of the whole woods from here. The treehouse does not ask the body to belong to the larger landscape anymore. It only lets enough of the afternoon remain visible that the body can feel sheltered within it. A leaf shifts beyond the opening, and the light changes on the wall. Not much, only enough to move one soft shadow lower over the boards, then let it drift away again. That is the kind of motion the room accepts. Seen through the window, gentled by distance. Felt inside the treehouse as altered light rather than event. The air in the room is warm, but not close. It has been held by timber and roof and the sun-warmed skin of the treehouse through the afternoon, yet it still keeps the freshness of a room raised among branches. The warmth lingers in the bench beneath you and in the wall boards where light has touched them. But the air itself remains easy. Not stale, not heavy. It rests lightly over skin and fabric and asks nothing from the body, but that it stop moving enough to notice the difference. You let a little more of your weight go into the cushion. The hips settle deeper. The lower back finds the place where the bench bed begins to carry rather than merely hold. One shoulder turns a fraction toward the wall side support. The hand resting on the cover no longer feels ready for the next task. That small change matters. It is the beginning of the true inward movement of the story, the point at which the body stops visiting the room and begins allowing the room to receive it. The room around the bench bed asks very little. Perhaps there is a small shelf below the opposite wall or set into the corner, just wide enough for a book and a mug. Perhaps a hook near the doorway holds a cardigan or a light shirt, no longer needed in the warmer stillness of the treehouse. Perhaps the floorboards below the bench show one paler stretch where sunlight has been lying, and one darker strip where the shadow of the window frame has kept to itself. None of these things needs much attention. The room is too compact for clutter to matter, and too honest for decoration to improve it. Shelf, hook, boards, window, bench, that is enough. The light reaches you in measured pieces. A warmer patch across one knee, a pale bar along the edge of the bench, a dimmer softness at the far end of the blanket, a faint leaf shadow over the wall where the grain makes it seem softer still. Outside, the day may still be full and broad. Inside the tree house, it has already been reduced to what the body can live among quietly. You shift once, only enough to let the room take more of you. Perhaps the nearer leg turns a little. Perhaps the shoulder closest to the wall leans more fully into the pillow or cushion there. Perhaps the head changes its angle toward the window or away from it. Nothing about this needs to be exact. The room's proportions have already done much of the work. The wall is close enough to support. The bench is narrow enough to feel contained without feeling confining. The opening to the outside is high and near, but not so open that the body feels on display to the world beyond it. The leaves remain where they are outside. The movement among them no longer belongs to the body in the way it would if you were standing under them on the ground. Here in the treehouse, a branch shifts, and the effect arrives only as a changed brightness at the frame, a little softened leaf shadow over the blanket, a pale flicker on the wall. The treehouse has already taken the larger world and turned it into something the body can bear at a distance. The first settling happens quietly. The shoulders lose some of the shape they brought in from the day. The knees grow heavier. The hands begin to belong to rest rather than readiness. You no longer feel placed in the treehouse by decision. You begin to feel received there. That receiving deepens quickly because the room is so close and sufficient. There is no broad floor to cross, no empty air to orient yourself against, no wide room asking for a sense of proportion. Everything belongs to reach. The bench beneath, the wall behind, the window above, the shelf at the side, the blanket under your hand, the hook by the doorway if it remains in sight at all. After that, very little. The longer you remain, the more the treehouse seems to gather itself around the bench bed. The walls do not close in. They simply keep the room from becoming larger than it needs to be. The light through the window does not open the room outward. It becomes part of the bench bed's own atmosphere. The shelf opposite is not separate furniture in any strong sense. It is merely a narrow plane within reach. Everything exists in relation to the place where you are resting, and because of that, the body trusts it very quickly. The bench bed tells the truth about itself the longer you remain on it. The cushion yields more at the center than at the edge. The wall side support is denser where it meets the boards. One fold of the blanket stays flatter under the hand than the rest. A seam near your thigh lies softer than it did at first. If your fingers move even a little across the fabric, they can feel where repeated use has smoothed one patch and left another firmer. None of these details needs more than a moment. They simply confirm that the room has held many quiet pauses before this one, and that it knows how to do so again. The leaf light at the window continues its patient work. One branch beyond the frame stirs, and a soft moving shadow crosses the board below the sill. Another leaf catches the sun and passes a little more brightness over the blanket. Then everything settles back. The change is too gentle to disturb. Seen through the body instead of watched by it, the leaves become part of the room's rhythm rather than part of the outside world. Your back gives more fully to the support behind it. At first, the cushion or pillow at the wall side was simply there. Now it begins to carry you. That difference matters. One shoulder softens, then the other. The neck keeps less of its old upright line. A little more of the day leaves you through the simple fact of no longer holding yourself as though you must rise again at once. The room is already measured by reach now. The edge of the bench beneath one hand, the shelf in the corner, the wall boards at your shoulder, the window frame, the blanket over your lap. After that, less and less. The treehouse has stopped being a room you are sitting inside and become a small arrangement of surfaces and supports within which the body can stop accounting for the day. The woods outside remain only as softened brightness beyond the opening, no longer a place to walk through, no longer a thing to look deeply into, only the pale continuation of summer beyond leaves and frame. You shift again, more slowly this time. The hips settle deeper. The weight at the base of the spine gives more fully to the bed. One hand may slip lower into the lap. The other may rest against the wall side cushion or along the edge where fabric meets timber. The head begins to understand what it would mean to lean more fully later, though it does not need to yet. The branch light changes again. This time the effect reaches you more through the skin than through the eye. The warmer strip across your knee narrows a little. The brightness on the wall softens. The blanket loses a little of its pale glow, then takes it back again by one quiet degree. Felt through the body instead of followed outward, these changes become part of the nap logic. The smallness of the treehouse becomes a comfort in a deeper way now. Because nothing is far from anything else, the body no longer needs to orient itself to space. The shelf is close. The wall is close. The blanket is close. The bed length of the bench is enough. There is no need to decide what in the room matters most. The room has already made that decision. The bench bed is the center. Everything else belongs only as it supports that fact. Perhaps a closed book lies on the shelf within reach. Its cover has gone a little paler on one edge where light reaches it. Perhaps the corners are softened from being lifted, and set down often enough to stop resisting the hand. But it does not ask to be opened now. If it remains in the room, it remains only as another quiet object that has passed beyond use for this afternoon. Perhaps a cup or mug stands beside it. If so, it matters no more than the book. In a room this size, a surface holding almost nothing becomes its own kind of reassurance. It means there is nothing else to manage. The room has crossed the line beyond which objects no longer invite action. They simply remain where they were left. Your breathing slows a little, not deeply, not in any dramatic or deliberate way, only enough that the upper body no longer works so hard at it. The bench bed notices first. The cushion beneath the back receives more weight. The shoulders settle another small fraction. The room becomes quieter not because the leaves outside have stopped moving, but because you have begun participating less in whatever still continues. The window remains where it was, bright enough to reassure, dim enough to be harmless. Earlier, it framed part of the outside world. Now it functions more like the edge of the room's own atmosphere. The leaves beyond it continue to soften the light. The frame keeps the world from arriving too broadly. The body no longer belongs equally to the woods and the tree house. It belongs here. You belong to the bench bed, now more than to the afternoon beyond the leaves. That shift happens fully here, before lying down, before any final movement into deeper rest. It happens because the body has stopped relating to the treehouse as a place visited briefly and started relating to it as a place to remain. The body no longer belongs equally to all its old directions, not to the branches outside the window, not to the ground below, not to the broad summer brightness moving beyond the leaves. It belongs to cushion, wall board, blanket fold, shelf edge, frame, the near few feet of room, and the bench bed that holds all of it together. The next movement feels natural when it comes. You do not decide in any formal sense to lie down. The bench bed and the afternoon have already been arranging themselves in that direction from the moment you sat. The movement begins quietly. One shoulder eases back further into the pillow. The hand that rested in your lap shifts onto the cover. One leg draws in a little more or lengthens, depending on what the bench asks of your body. The spine gives up another degree of uprightness. Then the body turns more fully into the built-in bed. The cushion receives the shift without protest. The blanket or cover changes under you in the smallest ways, one wrinkle smoothing, one fold gathering, the deeper part of the bench taking more of the hips than before. One hand may rest briefly at the wall-side pillow or along the timber edge while the head lowers. The treehouse is so compact that this turn does not feel like crossing a room or changing position very far. It feels like the quiet continuation of a rest already underway. You ease down in stages. The back lowers first, then the shoulders, then the hips settle further from the seat-edge attitude they had kept. The head comes later once the pillow has already made clear where it will receive it. That gradualness matters. Nothing in the room asks for collapse. Nothing in it asks for ceremony either. The bench has always been here. The pillow has always been waiting. The window has always been holding the afternoon at just enough distance. Lying down is only the next truthful thing. The body changes scale once fully on the bench bed. What had been a small room with a bed becomes now a bed with a few nearby boundaries. The shelf opposite is no longer furniture across from you. It is only a horizontal edge within the body's near field. The window is no longer something to sit beside. It is the softened source of light near the head of the bed. The treehouse itself begins to shrink to birth scale. The pillow under your head is not elaborate. It does not need to be. It is enough. It supports the base of the skull and the line of the neck without making itself into an event. The head settles into it gradually. One side of the face may turn a little into the fabric. The neck stops maintaining its old angle. The shoulders, already eased lower, no longer ask for the same inward brace they carried while sitting. A deeper quiet begins there first. If the folded blanket is near enough, you draw it over yourself now. Its weight gathers first at the knees, then over the shins, then higher across the lap and middle. It is not heavy, only sufficient. The kind of blanket that knows how to keep warmth close without making itself felt too strongly. It holds the air beneath it at once. That makes a difference almost immediately. The bench bed, the blanket, and the room begin to work together, and because they do, the body no longer has to keep its own warmth so vigilantly. The window remains at the right distance. From lying down, the view is reduced further. Perhaps only the upper part of the leaves remains visible. Perhaps one pale strip of brightness between branch and frame. Perhaps the softened shape of the outside canopy, no longer distinct enough to matter. The woods continue, but only as dimmed summer beyond timber and glass or open frame. The body no longer needs them in any stronger form. The blanket settles more evenly. The knees stop belonging to movement and begin belonging to weight. The thighs no longer hold themselves ready. The feet do not need the floor anymore. One hand may rest on top of the blanket. The other may lie near the wall side pillow or against the edge of the bed. Both become still almost at once. Their stillness feels different now than it did while sitting. It is no longer temporary stillness. It is the stillness of something that expects to remain this way. The treehouse continues to shrink around that. No larger room remains in active awareness. No description of corners or roofline or floor. Only the bench bed, the blanket, the pillow, the window holding softened leaf light, the shelf edge within reach if needed, the near wall, the small warm air of the treehouse. That is the room now. A little more of your weight gives way. The lower back settles. The shoulder nearest the pillow sinks. The side of the head rests more fully. You are not yet asleep, but you are no longer holding yourself above rest in any serious way. The branch light outside goes on changing by degrees. Perhaps the leaves beyond the pane lose some of their brighter gleam and become more even. Perhaps the patch on the wall lowers by one quiet shade. Perhaps one branch shifts and lets a little more gold through, then covers it again. These changes no longer feel external. They arrive only as alterations in the room's own tone, and the room is already too close and too trusted to wake the body with them. The bench bed does more of the work now than the body does. It supports the length of you. It carries the hips. It keeps the blanket from slipping away. It holds the pillow in place against the wall or frame. The treehouse becomes, for the purposes of this nap, not a place among trees or a raised room or anything imaginative at all, but simply a small built shape around a resting body. The body begins to notice less. The shelf opposite matters less than before. If there is a book there, it has become no more than a dim rectangle on wood. If there is a cup, its shape no longer asks to be read. The window matters less as view and more as the softened edge of brightness. The blanket matters less as fabric and more as the gentle weight that stays over you. Presence begins replacing function. The bench beneath you, the pillow at your head, the blanket over your middle and legs, the softened afternoon beyond the opening, the shelf edge, the near wall, after that less and less. A breath passes more slowly, then another. The blanket rises a little, then settles. The bench receives the movement, then holds still again. That rhythm matters more now than anything beyond the treehouse. If there are still leaves outside, they do not ask to be followed. If summer still lies over the woods beyond the window, it does so without needing witness. If the afternoon grows later, it does so beyond frame and branch, while here the room has already reached the right stillness. Inside, pillow, blanket, bench, breath, that is enough. The room grows quieter not by losing sound entirely, but by losing the body's investment in anything beyond these nearest things. A faint insect note outside, if there is one, reaches you only as a softened trace. A moving branch alters brightness but does not become an event. The treehouse has reduced everything so well that what remains useful now is nearly all within touching distance. You belong fully to the bench bed at last. The shoulders no longer keep any reserve. The neck does not correct. The hands rest where they came to rest. The legs stay where the blanket holds them. This is not a dramatic threshold, only the point at which the body stops negotiating with support and simply inhabits it. The nearer objects begin to lose even their names. The bench is no longer a built-in bed in a treehouse. It is simply what lies under you and keeps you held. The window is no longer an opening to the woods. It is simply the softened source of light. The shelf is no longer a piece of furniture. It is simply the horizontal edge across from you, now barely relevant. The blanket is no longer something you drew over yourself. It is simply the warm weight above the legs and middle. This is the final narrowing of the nap, not emptiness, only sufficiency. Nothing more is needed than this. The pillow supports the head. The bench supports the body. The blanket keeps the warmth close. The window keeps the day gentle. The treehouse keeps the whole arrangement small enough that the body does not have to carry any wider world for a while. A long stillness passes like that, made of almost nothing more than these few continuities. The blanket holding warmth, the bench supporting your weight, the pillow keeping the head, the leaf light softening at the window, the breath lifting, and settling without disturbing anything else. If some outside brightness still shifts beyond the frame, it shifts too softly to matter. If the woods continue on the other side of the opening, they continue without asking anything. If the day grows later, it does so beyond leaves and timber, while here the room has already reached the right stillness. What remains nearest is smaller than all of that. The pillow, the blanket, the bench beneath your back and hips, the faded brightness through leaves and frame, the quiet weight of your hands, the slow rise and fall of breath, and after that, less and less to notice. The treehouse no longer asks to be described. The bench no longer asks to be understood. They have already done their work. The body no longer listens for what changes. It rests in what remains. The pillow keeps the head. The blanket keeps the warmth. The bench keeps the body from the floor and from the larger day beyond the window. The frame keeps the leaves and summer brightness at exactly the right distance. A breath passes, then another. Nothing interrupts, nothing enters. Nothing asks for one more shift, one more outward glance, one more thought before drifting. Only the bench beneath you, the small timber afternoon, the filtered light through leaves and frame, the body no longer carrying itself alone. Then even those distinctions begin to soften, until there is almost nothing left but the feeling of being quietly held inside one small room among leaves while the afternoon continues gently outside.